the fact that, you know, Lizzie she'd sent me that message from Sochi saying, I wish she could have experienced it with me, to then being on a podium together at the next one.
Yeah. Laura Deas of Great Britain, 2018 Olympic bronze medalist.
I mean, that was just, it was fairy tale. You know, we were there, we made history for Team GB by being on the same podium.
Can she grab a medal to round out the season?
It was just a wild ride, and I was kind of in this sort of, it felt like I was in a bit of a washing machine, and just, it was just very, very difficult. I remember very clearly being told that we do believe that at least one person in this room is going to go on to win an Olympic medal. Yeah. And I remember just sitting there in my seat and just thinking, like, kind of making a promise to myself that, like, that is going to be me. Yeah. One day, that is going to be me. You're talking about me. I'll be eternally grateful for that, to know that the last time I was ever laid on a sled, I was winning a medal.
Yeah.
It's going to be close at the line. Only one woman stood between the Germans and a wash of the podium. Great Britain's Laura Deas. Named Female Sportsman of the Month for December. Laura Deas of Great Britain.
So this is it?
Yeah, this is it. The end.
So sporting hero.
Yeah, so I think I've got a couple, but I think the main one growing up was probably Lucinda Green. So I was a horsey girl, and like anyone in the horse world, she's an absolute like icon, and legend. And I love the fact that she was a woman in, you know, a relatively manly world, I suppose.
Yeah,
just
it's like a role model.
Yeah, just out there doing amazing things, and she was so versatile. She was able to win huge events on different horses from one week to the other.
Yeah.
And I just found that incredibly inspiring. And I guess like I'm really lucky that I grew up around that equestrian world, because I think it's a really good example of how, you know, men and women competing on a level playing field, because you're all in the same competition.
Yeah.
So I was really lucky that I never got the impression as a, you know, as a younger competitor or a girl that I was, you know, not as good as the guys. Yeah. And I think that stood me in really good stead going forwards, but I didn't really know it at the time because it was just the norm to me.
Do you think there are any skills from equestrian that you kind of took forward into skeleton in your career?
Yeah, I remember having a conversation the first week I was ever on ice with the coach, and he was asking me kind of what skills I was transferring from riding. And I think the ability to think quickly, like think on your toes, and be able to react in the moment and be okay with things being slightly unpredictable. That's, you know, that happens all the time with horses. You can never be 100% sure. You can have a plan.
You don't know what they're going to do.
But you don't need, you know, they've got a mind of their own. And so I think that stood me in really good stead. And I think just being resilient, being okay with being a bit uncomfortable, like those were all things that I was used to being, which was really helpful. And also the ability to plan a course and remember a course. I was used to remembering quite long eventing tracks, maybe 20 plus jumps. Yeah. So I think being able to remember, being used to being able to remember a plan and a course was really helpful as well for remembering the corners, because that was one of the hardest things when you first get on a sled, is like you're in survival mode. Yeah, you're trying to survive and like feel safe on this thing, and it's actually really difficult to recall all that information and make your way down the track and remember where you are to start with. Yeah. So I think that kind of helped me progress quite quickly when I was first on the sled, which was nice.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you think of them, they're two completely different sports, but when you actually look into it, there's a lot of skills that you can kind of bring over. Yeah. I believe Lizzie as well, she came from an equestrian background, is that right?
Yeah, she did riding as well, and there have been some other skeleton athletes that have ridden. So yeah, at first glance it seems quite random, but actually when you dig into it, there are a lot of transferable skills.
It's quite a strong relationship between the two sports, especially in the recruitment process. I mean, you were picked up by Girls for Gold back in 2009.
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, obviously you and Lizzie both had different sorts of careers going into it. Do you want to talk me through kind of almost how it was on your side of things? Obviously Lizzie, quite a quick quick jump into success, whereas you took a bit of a longer route.
Yeah, I was kind of like the slow burn, I suppose. So we got onto the programme at the same time. We came through that same programme. We got picked from different sports and entered this talent identification selection process that UK Sport were running. And so at the time, we didn't know which sports might be interested in us. So when we got asked if we'd like to do skeleton, it was totally like, we didn't even know what is this sport. But I think we both had the same attitude of, well, if you think we might be good enough to go to an Olympics one day, then let's do it.
Yeah, it's almost like they're dangling the Olympics in front of you. And I mean, everyone kind of probably thinks, how do you get into a sport like skeleton? But like you explained, it's kind of a different route of, we think you could be good at this, you could go to the Olympics. So it's that sort of
This is it, absolutely. Like, we were here at the University of Bath, and I remember very clearly being told, I don't know, there were maybe 30 of us at that point, and being told, like, we do believe that at least one person in this room is going to go on to win an Olympic medal. Yeah. And I remember just sitting there in my seat and just thinking, like, kind of making a promise to myself that, like, that is going to be me one day. That is going to be me. You're talking about me. But yeah, I mean, I took the long route, you could say, because Lizzie progressed really quickly, and so she got to go, or she earned her spot at Sochi, which was 2014, which was the first Olympics really that we could have gone to, because we'd been in the programme for 4 years at that point properly, and so like that, I mean, her progression was just insane. So the fact that she not only went there, but she went there competitive, and then she won it, was incredible. And it was tough for me, because I was, we'd started at the same point and the expectation had been the same. So the fact that I wasn't even there,
you're almost watching someone kind of push ahead, and you want to, you probably in your mind as well, you think you got capable of that.
This is it. And like, whilst the logical side of my brain like knew that I was nowhere near where I needed to be, the emotional side of me, I still wanted to be there, And I'll never forget, Lizzie sent me a text message from the games there. I think it might have been, I can't remember if it was before or after she won her medal, but she sent me a message and she said, I wish we could have experienced that together. And that really got me. And like, I'm quite an emotionally driven person anyway, and that really kind of, I mean, the fire was already there, but
it's added that extra bit of fuel.
Exactly, it really stoked the fire. And then that was kind of, not going to Sochi was kind of the point of my career where I thought, I can either stop this now and go and do something else, or I can double down, and this can be like everything.
Yeah, I believe I've read a quote from the BBC or somewhere anyway, that you said if it wasn't for missing out on Sochi, you would probably given up with skeleton. Yeah. That was kind of the driving factor of why you stuck with it, and almost the fuel behind going further and having such a successful career.
I think it was because, like I said, it forced me to evaluate how I was doing a lot of things as well. And it was a bit of a turning point in terms of me realising that I really had to take my progression as an athlete into my own hands. Yeah. That, doing what you're told and turning up to training and like, that's all important, but like, I need to work out what makes me tick. Like, how am I going to find those 1% here, 1% there? And it sort of set me on that path really. And then at that point in time as well, I was also fortunate to work with some people that really got me. Some brilliant coaches and psychologists, and between them all managed to set me on a path, which meant that I got to go to the next Olympics, and I got to go competitive and fight for that medal. And the fact that Lizzie she'd sent me that message from Sochi saying, I wish she could have experienced it with me, to then being on a podium together at the next one. I mean, that was just
an incredible feeling.
It was fairy tale. It really was. And we were there, we made history for Team GB by being on the same podium, and it really was, it felt like it was magical. And I still pinch myself. I look back on the video of it sometimes, and I sometimes I'm not even sure if it really happened, because it does just still feel, it's got that magical quality to it.
Like a dream, almost.
It's probably the adrenaline.
Talk me through that, the Olympics as well. So obviously you won bronze. How is that feeling of finally getting hold of the medal?
I mean, I heard someone say the other day that quite often the happiest person on the podium is the bronze medalist, because they came so close to not getting a medal, and then they did. And that is certainly true for me. I mean, I fought tooth and nail for that, and it was nip and tuck all the way. So I started after the first run I was in 6th position, and then overnight after the second run I was in 4th. And I was actually quite happy with being in 4th because it felt like a really nice spot to chase a medal from.
I feel like the pressure's off you and more on the person in 3rd in that position as well.
I mean, I'd done so much work with my psych, and so I was kind of looking for ways to feel really positive as well, and like that's how it felt, is that I was putting the pressure on someone else. So I went into day 2 feeling pretty good, but then I was still in 4th position after the 3rd run, and at that point, you know, it's kind of like, well, it really is, it's
all or nothing.
It's now or never, isn't it, because it's the last run. And so I put the 4th run down, and I knew it was a good one. I felt it in my bones that it was a good one, but it was just agony waiting for the rest of the sleds to come down, obviously, because then my fate was not in my hands anymore, it was in someone else's, and I had to watch the other sleds come down. And yeah, when the last sled came down and dropped back into 4th place, and that moved me up into 3rd, and the fact that there was only 0.02 of a second between me and 4th place over 4
It's crazy,
is bonkers, and it still makes me nervous now thinking about those 200s and where they could have gone. But yeah, you know, I felt like I'd won, you know, I won that medal, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah, obviously before the Olympics you had that build up of 4 years of the disappointment as well from Sochi. What's going through your mind in those 4 years, and how was the preparation? Like, was it very intense, or did it start quite relaxed and then it's like, right, we're stepping on it a bit closer to it arriving? How does that kind of work?
It was intense from pretty much day 1 of that cycle, because as I said, I'd kind of made a decision that it was going to be my time, and so I remember thinking the year after the season after Sochi that, like, again, mentally looking for an edge, that maybe this was the year where other people, you know, it's the year after the Olympics, people are maybe taking time off or like taking it a bit easy, and I kind of made a decision that I'm going to sneak in there. I'm going to work extra hard, like almost this is going to be my Olympic year, kind of in terms of the prep, and I'm really going to make my mark on World Cup. And that really was a breakthrough year for me, because it was the year that I started to podium on World Cup. It was my first major placing at a World Championships that year. It's the year I got on funding, so I kind of felt like a proper athlete at that point as well. So yeah, that kind of set the quad in motion, and then it was just momentum.
Spirals from there, kind of thing.
And just refining all the way through, and developing a belief that when I went to Pyeongchang that A, I deserved to be there, and B, that I was going to make it my games, and that's kind of the mentality that I took with me.
It's a good way of looking at it. After the Olympic Games, what's kind of the next thing you're thinking about? Because obviously you have that big high of getting your medal, getting the bronze. What's kind of the next thing you were thinking? Are you just straight on to the next event, or are you kind of relaxing and celebrating a little bit?
It was a little bit of both. I didn't want to become complacent, but I also knew that I needed to have some time out, because, you know, we're not robots. We need, you know, human beings need time to kind of recover, reset, and that was the summer that I got married, and actually that was a really nice way to kind of not distract, but kind of put the emphasis on a different part of my life for a while. So that was amazing. And then kind of after the wedding, it was like, right, back to it again. Straight back in. And there was a huge amount of change at that point, because you know, it's a new Olympic cycle, so, you know, things move on and change. And it wasn't that long after that when COVID hit. And then all of a sudden we're in the middle of the Olympic cycle, and we're in a pandemic, and we don't even know for a while whether the Olympics is happening or not. So it turned everything on its head, really.
How was COVID then, dealing with obviously skeleton as well? It's quite an outdoor sport. You're probably around people quite a lot. How did that kind of affect training? How did that affect your preparation? But also, like, the mental side of thing, how did you cope during COVID? Just maybe on a human level in general.
I think it was really compartmentalised, because there was a huge amount of stress and worry about, you know, the same things that everyone else was worrying about, like, am I going to catch this? Is it going to be really bad? Worried for family members and all that stuff going on. But actually, for my sport and my training, it was quite good in a way, because it forced me, you know, I went from training here in a very professional environment to being in my garden like everybody else. But it forced me to keep things really simple, because it was, yes, I could speak to my coach, but I wasn't in this environment, I was at home. So it really kind of reframed things, and I had to remember how it was to be quite intuitive in how I was training, listening to my body, and taking more decisions for myself, essentially, rather than kind of outsourcing it. And that actually worked really well for me. And I actually got in really good physical shape just by doing the basics in the garden and like pushing my car up and down the road.
I feel like it was a time where everyone had nothing going on, so everyone stuck to something specific. A lot of people went to even just running and things like that. So I feel like as an athlete, was your focus on just getting in the best possible shape for after COVID, almost preparation for as soon as you come back out, you want to get straight back into it?
Yeah, it was that. And you know, I know I was very, very lucky to have something like that to focus on during COVID, because it enabled me to be even more single-minded in a way about what I was doing, because there was nothing else to do. And we were also very lucky as a sport in that we were still able to travel in the winter, and yes, we had to make changes, and the travel became quite complicated, but we could travel and we could do our sport, which, you know, other sports couldn't. So we had a lot to be grateful for during that time.
Of course.
You know, parts of it were tricky.
Yeah. So we jumped to the 2022 Olympics.
It was really difficult, and it's a weird thing to say about going to an Olympics, because there were aspects of it that I still took a lot of joy from. Like, representing a country at the Olympics is, you know, something that a lot of people never even get to do. So the fact that I, you know, through a COVID, you know, sort of pandemic, we'd still got there, and I was representing my country and seeing this amazing track. It really is incredible. You know, so there were lots of positives. However, it was really, really difficult, because I was going in there as a defending medalist, and I knew in my heart of hearts that I wasn't going to be competing anywhere near for those medals, because of how things had panned out with where we were with our equipment. And we just, as a programme, we took a risk with our equipment. We went in a new direction because that's what we needed to do, because, you know, it's an innovation sport, and if you don't keep innovating and trying to find a new edge,
you fall behind.
Then you fall behind. And so, you know, we'd taken a risk, we'd done something different, and by that point it was very evident to me, at least, that it wasn't working for me, like not even close. And my spirit was so broken by that point, because I'd spent the last 2 seasons going into races, hoping against hope that something was going to change, that we'd find something, that we'd tweak something, and just not getting anywhere, and consistently being at the back of the field. Yeah,
I feel like coming from Pyeongchang as well, winning a bronze, the next step for you mentally after that is probably, your mind's probably going straight for gold. You're probably thinking, I've got this now, that's a platform to go forward. But I guess having that expectation before, that you kind of know deep down maybe you can't compete the same. What does that feel like? Does that take a big toll in the build up, but during performance?
Huge, both like internally for my own ambition and what I wanted to achieve, and externally as well, because, you know, I'm very aware that it's a sport that most people tune into once every 4 years. And they go, right, who was good at the last Olympics? Right, well, they must still be good now then. I really struggled with the weight of thinking that people were going to wonder what on earth's happened to me, and that people would think that I just couldn't slide anymore, that I just wasn't very good anymore. And I knew that wasn't the case, but I had no way of expressing that on the sled. And it was really, really difficult. So in the end, the mentality I took into the Olympic race was, I know it's not going to be a good result. All I can do is give a great performance. And I think I did that. I put down 4 really good runs. And I'm actually, like, when I watch it back, I'm very proud of the way I slid, even though it was a total disaster in other areas. I mean, and as if things hadn't been hard enough, I actually tore my quad on the second day as well.
Really?
So I was competing with a torn quad for day 2, which I kind of almost forgotten about until I look back on it recently, because there was so much focus on the equipment and the plan, and like, why wasn't it coming together? So yeah, it was just a wild ride.
Yeah.
I was kind of in this sort of, it felt like I was in a bit of a washing machine, and just, it was just very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And I was trying to just keep my head and keep control of the things that I could control, which was my performance on the sled, and how I conducted myself around that. And I think I did that. But I was desperately unhappy with the situation, and that's what really fueled the season after the Olympics, because I just knew I couldn't leave it at that.
Yeah.
I could not let my last race on the sled be
disappointing.
Disappointing, and like down in the mid-teens somewhere. I knew I was better than that.
Of course.
So that's what fueled the.
So it's almost trying to come back and prove yourself and prove to other people you are the same Laura that you were before. Nothing has changed.
Yeah.
And like, essentially getting that across to the people in your next competition.
Yeah. I really wanted to prove to myself and to the world that was watching, or I felt was watching, and not just me, like my teammates as well.
Yeah.
I really felt like we all collectively deserved to prove what we could do.
Yeah.
And finally, we were in a position, we were very lucky, where we kind of had a bit of a restructure. We had new coaches and new equipment at that point, and whilst we were still trying to get to grips with it and learn it, it was already like put us in a much, much stronger position. So yeah, that season post Beijing was just a redemption tour. It was kind of like, let's get this, let's do what we can.
Let's go through it.
And it was just so refreshing to be in a new environment where things felt possible again. And I think the icing on the cake to that season was to win a team world medal with Matt, and not just that, but for my teammates to also be on the podium with me.
It's like a collective group success in that sense.
Exactly, because we had Brogan and Craig who got the bronze that day, and then myself and Matt who got the silver. And it was just fantastic because it felt like such a team celebration of feeling successful again and being on the podium again. And it kind of, I think that healed a lot of the hurt from Beijing.
I feel like, you're shutting up all the haters, everything that's kind of gone wrong. You're kind of clouding that out, and it's back to celebrations.
Yeah.
Obviously, especially coming from quite a successful mid part of your career, having that little down patch probably did take a mental toll. But then what's it like going from a high to low back to a kind of a high again? What's that mentally like? I mean,
when I look back at it now in the rearview mirror, it's actually quite a nice story arc. It didn't feel it at the time, and I'm very aware that I'm very lucky to have had the opportunity to kind of write that final chapter in the manner that I wanted to do it. Because I know, that's not always possible for athletes. They don't get a say in how that comes about. So I'm very grateful that I was able to kind of finish on that high, and the fact that I won a medal in my last ever race, like, I'll be eternally grateful for that.
Incredible.
I know that the last time I was ever laid on a sled, I was winning a medal.
Yeah.
It's just lovely. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I feel like it's the bit we probably don't want to get to, the retirement part. Just talk us through it, how you're feeling, and what was kind of the thought process in making the decision.
I was really torn because after having my daughter, I wanted to keep my options open, and I'm so in awe of the female athletes that come back after having a baby and compete again, and we've got a few great examples of that in our sport already. But the timing was just right for me to say goodbye, and I think it will never feel easy. I think that's the thing I needed to remember, is that whenever anyone stops doing something that they love, it's never going to feel great.
Yeah.
But like I said, the fact that I was able to sort of put a full stop on my career in a really positive way was lovely, and I still miss it. I miss it all the time. I miss being able to be so single-minded about things, and getting myself to that sort of competition readiness.
Yeah.
That was something that I'll miss. But there's lots of elements of it that I won't miss, and that were really hard as well. The amount of travel, the disruption to my family's lives, and things that we had to put on hold. And so, there's lots of positives to having more time at home as well. And obviously my daughter's now my main focus. So it's lovely and it's different.
Amazing. What's kind of, in your eyes, the next chapter? What's any future goals, any career paths you could see yourself going down in the future?
I'm really passionate about broadcasting and I think Beijing really actually accentuated this for me, is like sort of storytelling around sport. The fact that the competition is one thing, but there's always a story behind the competition as well. And trying to find that story, I think, is a real passion of mine, and that's something that I really want to pursue more.
Amazing. So we'll see Laura everywhere on TV in naming headlights. So where are we? Talk me through.
So we have made it to the push track.
Yeah.
So this is where I've done through my career the majority of my specific skeleton training. So we use the gym up at Bath Uni for all of the physical work that doesn't involve pushing a sled. And then this is where we come and actually push a sled, so I can show you around.
Amazing. Let's have a look.
Cool.
Yeah, what's the feeling like being back here?
I mean, it just feels like home. I've done, like, I don't know how many hours I've spent here, honestly, through my career. I mean, I've been training here for 15 years. So a lot of hours have been spent on this track, honing my skills. And this is where we trialled as well. So this is the first ever interaction that I had with the sport properly. So
this has been your entire career in this place?
Yeah, basically. This is where it all started. I mean, this is where I proved that I could push a sled well enough to even go out on ice. So
what's the sort of criteria of pushing a sled? I mean, obviously with the sport, I guess you've got to get enough speed, you've got to show a bit of control, but what are they looking for?
I think initially, once they know that you are, in theory, fast enough through a sprint trial, bringing people on here to start with is, can you follow instructions? Have you got some coordination? And can you make progress quickly?
Yeah.
Because if you can't make progress quickly and follow instructions, you're never going to be able to have a career in skeleton from the UK, because we have to pick up the sport so quickly compared to our competitors. So we're competing against people that have their own ice track, and they've been doing it maybe since they were 10 or even earlier. And we're coming into it. I mean, I was 20 before I started competing. So, these competitors have got 10 years on you.
You've got a lot of ground to cover up very quickly.
Exactly. So it's very much like, how quickly can you progress? Can you listen? Can you follow instructions? And can you push a sled? Because it's a pretty unusual movement pattern to be able to run bent over. And no one's great when they first start. But
so like practice, repetition, and eventually I guess you get good enough.
Yeah, but you can't take too long.
Skeleton for Team GB seems to be quite a successful sport. We don't quite have the facilities in the UK anywhere really for direct training, but in terms of training elsewhere, why are we so successful? Is it because we can adapt a bit quicker to the sport? Or?
Yeah, I think, like I was saying before, it's choosing the right people at the beginning is really important, and we've hit upon a formula for success, which is the right people, the right coaches, the right equipment, and the right exposure. And if you can get those things right, then we worked out back in the early 2000s or even before that if you can do those things, you don't necessarily have to have been doing the sport since you were 5-10 years old, that you can get in there and mix it with the best. And maybe you don't have that same depth of knowledge, but that doesn't mean that you can't compete on the day.
So what are sort of any like highlights or memories from your career that stand out?
Oh, there's so many. I think obviously like there's a few podium moments that are the obvious ones. So Olympics, World Champs, World Cup win. There's those ones. But actually, what sticks in my mind and what makes me smile the most is actually looking back on like moments with teammates.
Yeah.
So I think that really, we dedicate our lives to this sport. We travel so much. We spend so much time in the company of our teammates. They become our family or a second family. And so, just memories of whether it's like a long car journey together or a very long van journey together across Europe maybe, or silly things that have happened, or like just great moments that you've shared. Like, it does sound like a cliche that it's about the people and it's about the memories, but it is, because they're the people that you experience things with. And I think, the journey that I've been on with my teammates through this roller coaster, which has been my career, is really special. And I think, to be honest with you, that's probably what I'm going to look back on the most.
Yeah. So would you consider that something that you're going to miss the most? What are the sort of things that we will miss from your career?
I'm going to miss the training environment hugely. Probably more so than the competition sphere, to be honest. I think the day-to-day interactions with your teammates who are also your friends. For because it's them that gets you through it. Those tough training days, and I will miss that. I'll miss having that tight knit kind of feeling like everyone, we've all got each other's backs and we're in this together. I think that's really special. And I will miss competing. I will miss being able to test myself in that way, I suppose, and be so single-minded about something. But it also had started to become really tough, getting up on a race day morning and knowing that I had to kind of put myself into that arena and give a good account of myself just became harder and harder. It mentally took, I was still able to do it, but it took so much from me every time.
You've got that expectation as well, and always the eyes as well, because you've had such an established career. People keep looking to you for that. So I feel like as you get a bit older and a bit on with your career, do you find that takes a bit of a toll in that sense?
I think it does, and especially in being in such a competitive program as this, there is expectation every single time you step on the track, and I think that does take its toll after a while. There's only so many years that you can do that for, and whilst I will always love the sport, I think it was the right time to sort of step away from that kind of pressure week in, week out.
Yeah, amazing. So this is it?
Yeah, this is it. The end.